In this video, what we're going to have a look at doing is sketching out quite a large 2-point perspective box and then dividing that box into small boxes using some split lines to separate and section the box. So in order to do that, what we need to do is start off initially with a large box. So I'm going to try and do all of this freehand, but I will use a ruler just to demonstrate certain principles at different times. So we'll start off, I'm just going to turn my page and I'm going to start off by sketching a vertical line on my page, which is essentially going to be the corner of my work. Then what I want to do as normal is, is sketch our perspective box. So looking at where my vanishing points are going to go, and they'll be off the page in this instance. So I'm going to do a line going off my page that way, and then I want the top of the box, the top corner, probably about this height here. So I'm going to flatten something like that. So we've got that, the lines converging. Now turn it round, I'll do the same, the opposite direction. So we'll do a vanishing point over here, and we'll do vanishing point, something like that. Okay, so those two are going to meet. And then we need to decide on the side of the box. So we'll have the side of the box something like this. Okay, and we'll have a slightly longer side on this side. So side of the box here. Okay, vertical line. And then finally, we need to flatten our box at the top as though they're going to meet. And just turning my page round again. Okay, now the trick with what we're about to do is to really press incredibly lightly with the pencil. So far I've actually pressed harder than I would if I were just plotting this out myself, because otherwise you won't see it on the video. So what we need to do next is just divide our box up. But we're not going to do it evenly in the middle. So if I just use a ruler just to demonstrate that principle very briefly. So if I join corner to corner here and just do a line there and do the same on this side, all I'm trying to do is show where the middle is, and I'm going to do the same on this point. Now you don't need to do this. This is just to demonstrate that when we come to do this, we don't actually want to do this at this middle point here. Okay, so I'm going to have a point on this block, so somewhere about there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is this needs to connect to this vanishing point over here, but instead of dropping vertically down, we're going to just come down at an angle. We don't have to go through this midpoint at all. That's just, it's nothing to do with it. It was more just to show that if I dropped a vertical line down here, that we're in perhaps this third rather than halfway. So if I connect to my vanishing point over here, I just turn my page round. Okay, so realistically, it's probably something like that, maybe slightly out, maybe that line's actually a bit better. So it's just converging here. And then at this point here, instead of doing a vertical line, I'm just going to do a diagonal line down. So we'll get just something, nice angle. There's a line. Notice it doesn't go through the middle. That's irrelevant. So we've got those two starting points, and the next thing I want to do is divide this top face up here with a line going off this way to the vanishing point. So I'm actually going to divide this original box into 8 segments. So let's have this side on here slightly bigger, so I'm just going to put a point there. And again, what I want to do is sketch to my vanishing point. So here's my line, okay, something like that. And then what I want to do now on here is drop this down. But again, I don't want to drop it vertically, so I'm going to drop it at a slight angle. So we've got a difference with our blocks. And then lastly, we're going to do the same here, coming across. Again, that was just a point. It doesn't have to go through that point at all. So what we'll do, I'll put a point on this line, and I'm going to go to my vanishing point over here, and I'm going to come to my vanishing point over here. So now we've got one block here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 at the back, which we can't see. But what we want to do with those blocks is now have a gap between this line that we've sketched. So we're going to sketch kind of almost like a parallel line. Okay, so if I put a point, and of course the bigger the gap is the bigger the distance between the blocks. So I'm going to put a point here. So this point needs to connect on this side, something like that, and on this side, following to the vanishing point. Okay, so depending on the length of the box, this might just start narrowing a little bit more at this point, if that's what you want to do, just to accentuate the perspective. Then I also want to do the same on this line, so I'm going to turn my look around here. Okay, let's do the same. And on this one, it is better to have a parallel line because we're not actually using perspective there. Then this one we are, and this converges quite a lot more, so we do probably want it to end up a little thinner at this point here than it is over here. Okay, then the last one, we've got one line going off on this side, so we're wanting this line, remember. So if I use point there, we've got a line break there, and then we've got our diagonal line going down. So now we've sketched this part in, what we need to do is start looking at making the blocks appear like blocks, and we're actually going to treat them as separate materials in the end. So we now need to start looking at connecting the points to the vanishing points. So in this instance, I'm going to use a ruler to demonstrate it, otherwise it becomes perhaps hard to see. So we've got a cut over here, which means we've now got a point here and a point there. Those 2 points need to connect to our vanishing point over here. So if I used my ruler as an example, okay, what I want to do is sketch very, very lightly, and this is the key now, is really sketching incredibly lightly. And let's use our other one here, okay, and we'll sketch this very lightly on the inside. So we're going to end up with a lot of construction lines, but we're going to use those so we can create our boxes. So everywhere now that we have a corner point, we now need to connect to our imaginary vanishing points. So if I just demonstrate this now, okay, and this is where, as I've just said, we're going to have so many lines, and it actually becomes, or can appear, quite confusing. Everywhere where we've got a corner, and the trick, of course, with this is to try to get the right angles, vanishing points. Okay, so if we started off solely just with this one, I'm just going to add in a couple more very, very quickly. Okay, and just looking at our lines. So we've got this line here. So if we move this across, this point would be parallel, because if you remember, that's got it doesn't connect to a vanishing point at all, so it would be a parallel line cut, and we will match the same just on that corner also. Okay, like so. So we would come down, or we come vertically down, because we could say that it's a different shape, but actually in this instance we'll do this way. So just mark that in. Okay, so the trick now really is just to start to define our shapes. I'm going to do these 2 corners and this one here and this one here, and then I'll start to hopefully demonstrate a little bit more exactly what I mean. So we just go in there. I'll do this one here on this side. We'll get our block in there and in there. So what I'm going to do is pretend there are no materials right now and just use a darker line to demonstrate some of the box shapes. So I'll press a little bit harder with my pencil. So one box that we know is not going to change at all unless we made it a see-through box is this one on the top. So if I just define this a little more with a darker line, as you can see, okay, we're just going to make this one stand out a little bit more. So there's my box, and if I just lightly, not quite as hard, just make those lines. So now you can see that we've got our first segmented block. Let's now do the one next to it. Okay, so what we know is we can carry on this point here, this carries on this line, and it carries on that line. So let's put that in. And at this bottom point here, this is where we'd have our line to a vanishing point. So something like that. And now that I've done that, we just want that one to be a bit thicker to highlight that difference. And of course here, this is where we need to follow this angle. Come straight down. So now let's highlight this one. And this is where thick and thin lines will really make your work stand out. It makes a huge difference. Okay, so we've got that initial break of these two parts here. Of course, there's nothing from this corner because this is a face. So then what we could start to look at doing is do the one under this box. So if I just highlight, that's that line there. Here is the underneath of that box. Very quickly. Okay, we'll get this line in here. And then we've got our line for the bottom of the box, stopping at this face. So let's just mark that one in. Now, at this point, normally what I do is I make this box here a see-through box, which is where we will need all of our other lines within it. So what I'm going to do, one thing I know that doesn't change is this bottom line here. So just to demonstrate that principle. Now, the idea behind this is though it's made of glass or transparent plastic. Okay, so let's say that's what we've got, and we're just going to define the outer edge there, this one, and we can bring in this bit here, and this line here, which makes that box, okay, quite clear. Now, if of course we wanted to show as though this box was glass, then what we can do is use our lines that we've got. And instead of going right to the corner here, we tend to just come up slightly. We can have a line like so. Again, not connecting. And what we're trying to demonstrate is a little bit of refraction of the line, as though we can't fully see through. We can see through this box and we see edges, but slightly distorted. So we've now got that same angle. So actually, just using my ruler, you can see that I would need to go with the same angle if I could see through this box at the back, like so. So that would be my line. But of course, what I do is I have a distorted line, something like that. But then of course I also could see through the box to this other material behind it. So this is where you could also add in this shape behind here, okay, and working out where the lines go for that shape. So again, okay, and this represents this box behind. So this is how we can start to do and start to look at see-through boxes. Of course, just missing a line here, which is this one, which again, we might have as the bottom of that line, and then where this line would meet, which is here, of course, this one would follow a similar path. So we put that in. Okay, perhaps something like that, and obviously we remove this, but then this part becomes part of the other box that's actually at the bottom. This is where it does get a little bit more complex in terms of all the lines. Okay, it becomes a lot easier in actual fact when you make decisions about which box is going to be rendered out of certain materials. So now I'll finish this off and fast forward the video.